Hello my friends, in today's video we will be taking a look at Sony FE28mm f2 lens. This is the first lens that I have bought for Sony A7 Mark III, which is unfortunately still not available in this country, so in the meanwhile I have decided to review this lens on Sony A6500 and I will also review it on A7 Mark III once it arrives. 28mm f2 is full frame lens, so it can cover a whole 35mm sensor. Sony A6500 of course has APS-C sensor, so the full frame equivalent focal length of this lens on A6500 is 42mm. I personally do like 40-ish mm equivalent focal length. It is quite versatile focal length, suitable for street photography, certain landscapes, environmental portraits, and some types of product photography. The maximal aperture of f2 also makes this lens suitable for low light shooting or blurring the background. The build quality of this lens is very solid. It is a metal construction, even the focusing ring is metal. The mount is metal as well of course, so it actually does feel quite premium and I don't have any complaints about the build quality. The length of this lens is 6 cm or 2.36 inches and the weight is 200 grams, so it is fairly compact, especially for a wide angle full frame lens with bright f2 aperture. It is actually a fairly good match for Sony A6500. I'm not the biggest fan of using full frame lenses on crop sensor cameras, but here it actually makes sense to do so. The lens comes with pedal-shaped lens hood. It probably is weather sealed to a certain degree. It is supposed to be dust and moisture resistant, but I really wish it was fully weather sealed because I do intend to use it as my go-to lens for casual shooting. The focusing ring is very smooth with perfectly even resistance. It is focus by wire system of course, but it is definitely one of the better focus by wire lenses that I have tested. The manual focusing with this lens is actually quite pleasant. The ring is also speed sensitive. There is even a nice distance scale, so it is really easy to control it, especially with all of the aids that the newer Sony cameras offer. The focusing ring is the only control element on this lens. It is not image stabilized, and if you want to turn the autofocus off, you have to do so in the menu. Regarding the autofocus, I am happy to report that it works great. It is extremely fast with Sony A6500 and also very accurate in both stills and video. Of course, it does work with all autofocus features that Sony offers, including the face detection, eye and face detection, and so on. The focusing is also very quiet. You can only hear it when the camera is very close to your ear, and the shotgun mic will not pick the focusing sound. The closest focusing distance is 29 cm, so at that focal length it means that it is not very suitable for semi-macro shots. Regarding the image quality, wide open at f2 the central sharpness is already good. The corners are frankly quite soft, but at f2 it is definitely usable for any kind of digital publishing. At f2.8 the center sharpness is excellent and so is the contrast. The corner sharpness is significantly improved. At f4 the center sharpness is even a bit better, so it is excellent, and the corner sharpness is now pretty good as well. At f5.6 the sharpness is excellent across the frame. That can also be said about f8. At f11 the sharpness decreases because of the diffraction. Overall I am happy about the sharpness. The lens is usable at f2. From f4 to f8 the sharpness is very good. Regarding the other optical qualities, there is certain amount of distortion and chromatic aberration, especially at f2, but it fortunately can be very effectively corrected in camera or in editing software like Adobe Lightroom, so these are not the problems for real-world use. Regarding the color reproduction and the character of this lens, those are definitely strengths of this lens. I do like the contrast that this lens provides, especially when stopped down. The background blur is also very nice since it has 9 aperture blades. Overall, the optical qualities of this lens in combination with Sony A6500's APS-C sensor are very good in my opinion, and I am looking forward to testing this lens on Sony A7 Mark III. This lens is also highly suitable for video production. 28mm focal length on APS-C cameras is actually quite popular in serious filmmaking. The autofocus is fast and silent, so that is not a problem either, but since it is not stabilized, you will probably want to use it on the gimbal. And this lens is actually very suitable for that thanks to the lightweight. A6500 has stabilized sensor, so that helps a lot, but it is not quite enough for walking, for example. F2 is also fairly bright aperture, which means that it is also suitable for low light shooting, and with A6500 it performs very well here as well. As I've said in the past, I'm generally not a fan of using full frame lenses on crop sensor cameras, but here it actually makes sense to use the 28mm f2 on Sony A6500. It's actually a pretty good match in terms of size, and the results that you can achieve using this combination are very impressive. The most relevant alternative to this lens is Sony 35mm f1.8 and Sigma 30mm f1.4. There are basically two reasons why someone would buy the FE 28mm instead of those lenses. The first would be the focal length if someone prefers 42mm full frame equivalent, which I personally do. And the second reason would be that if you ever decide to switch to the full frame, the FE 22mm f2 will still be relevant lens many years from now. The 35mm f1.8 has a bit brighter aperture, it is a bit smaller, and importantly it has image stabilization, although the 28mm seems to be a bit sharper. The Sigma 30mm f1.4 may have the best image quality with A6500. It has much brighter aperture, but it is not stabilized, and there are some issues with both automatic and manual focusing. As usually, the choice here depends on the preferences. So to sum up, Sony FE 28mm f2 is a full frame lens with premium build quality. The optical characteristics are very good overall, although for solid corner sharpness it needs to be stopped down to about f4. The autofocus is extremely fast and silent. Manual focusing with this lens is quite pleasant as well. Overall, the FE 28mm f2 is a good match for A6500, and it could be an alternative to the 35mm f1.8 OSS. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope that you liked this video and that you found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.